when we say millennial and we say these selfish, entitled, technologically dependent, are we really talking about millennials? Are we really talking about people who were kids or adolescents during the millennium? Because this is what we're really thinking about, I think, are white college kids. Culturally speaking, when people talk trash about millennials, and yes, that's me, we're talking about people of privilege who are younger. And so yes, technologically obsessed, that happens a lot. But not all millennials have smartphones. And so, just to challenge this notion a little bit, when you say millennial, I would be willing to bet, I'm not a betting man, I'd be willing to bet though that you didn't think of Trayvon Martin. He was a millennial. You probably didn't think of Michael Brown either. He was 18 when he was murdered. He's also a millennial. But see, when people see these faces, they have different labels for them. And so, not to get too heavy there, but let's go ahead and venture into the negative side of this. When you hear the word criminal, and you don't have to yell it out this time, but there's definitely images associated with who is criminal and who's not.
I can yell it out.
All right, let's yell it out. Let's go ahead. What do you think?
U.S. empire is criminal.
Okay, I like that. So the empires, that would be...
All empires.
Empires, imperialism, that's evil. Racism. But culturally speaking, when the news... So we're on the light side, we get it. But when people are perpetuating this idea of criminals, this crisis that we're constantly under of high crime rates, which is not a thing either, but what do we hear about? You said it.
Young black men.
Young black men. That's the main stereotype. But any other thoughts?
Undocumented people.
Yeah. Immigrants. People who literally are labeled as a noun, illegal. You're an illegal.
And I would go on to say also just black people in general. I feel like our blackness has become criminal in this country.
Yeah. And that wasn't an accident, certainly. And so, let's talk about criminals. And this is actually a great segue. You probably didn't think about these people.
Wow.
This is actually in Nashville, where I'm from, where my panelists came from. This is during the lunch counter sit-ins. These people were criminals by a formal sense, and culturally speaking, that's what they were labeled as. Why? Well, it was illegal for black people to sit at the lunch counters downtown. So they were called, what were they called? Criminals, lawbreakers, troublemakers, rabble-rousers. And you know what? They were all of those things. But they were actually in the right. What was criminal were the people, criminal in the moral sense, in the ethical sense, were the people who beat them unabashedly. But see, those people weren't sent to jail most of the time. And so there's a very rich history, if you haven't read much about it, about Nashville and the civil rights movement. And Dr. James Lawson, who was on staff or faculty at the Divinity School, how he united students from 4 black colleges to stage nonviolent protests, civil disobedience. They were criminals in the formal sense, but they got stuff done. They confronted the mayor in public and forced him to admit in front of everyone, so that there was no going back, that it was wrong to discriminate on the color of someone's skin on the basis of that. And so, again, when you hear the news media perpetuating this idea of criminals, here's another criminal. Someone who is arrested. And this is kind of coming out now, and it's not a mainstream idea, but people have been saying for years, and a lot of people are catching on now, that the tough on crime era, post-civil rights, was really the language of criminality was taken from this literal criminalization of people of color and civil rights activists, and clearly has been taken too far. But now you see what's happened in many ways. Black bodies, just all black bodies, have been criminalized in a social and cultural sense. And so that's not an accident. It's not. There's been an agenda. There are quotes from it. I have quotes. You can look up Atwater. You can look up Nixon's chief of staff. This was not an accident that the language of criminality became merged with ideas of race in mainstream culture, in white culture, in the media. And so that's just one important point.